This week on the 77% Street Debate.
Where is Africa in this whole AI conversation right now?
Hopefully trying to lead the conversation, but we're not there yet.
As African people, building our own tools, because you can't rely on the big tech to do it for you.
Who decides on which kind of future do we want to live in? And at the moment, it's really a future that has been decided for.
Welcome to the 77% Street Debate. My name is Rachel Nduati, and today we are going to be talking about AI. Is it made for Africa, or is it just, trying to catch up? To answer this question, we need a few people here who look amazing. So I'm going to start with you, Tejumade. You have been in the AI space for quite a while now, right? Where is Africa in this whole AI conversation right now?
Well, Africa is hopefully trying to lead the conversation, but we're not there yet. The most important thing for Africa to also be part of the leaders in this space is education. So AI education is something I'm focused on, and we also see a lot of product out on the continent now, but definitely there's still a lot to be done, and we're working actively hard.
Yeah, interesting. So they're working hard to be on that map. But Karine, you have this legal background when it comes to artificial intelligence. You have a startup as well. It's called Alina. Tell us about that. Tell us about where is Africa in this whole AI conversation?
Yeah, okay, that's amazing. Like Teju said, Africa is picking up. We are not yet there, but there are so many wonderful and amazing things being done. For instance, my startup, which is Alina AI, we're building an AI governance solution that enables you to use AI responsibly and then also ethically. So there are many tech startups coming up. Ghana, for instance, has like a whole tech AI hub. In fact, the Google AI hub is actually present in Ghana. So people think that Africa just is lagging behind, but there are so many great, wonderful things happening in there, which is picking up on its own time.
Interesting. I'm going to come back to you. So she says that Africa is picking up. Tell us, Quincy, do you think that Africa is catching up, or do you actually disagree?
So, well, I think the first question I would like to ask back, in a sense, to all the panelists is to sort of catch up where, or where to? Because for me, this whole question around AI, or so-called AI, and the so-called race, and where we're going to go with it, is always a question of who decides on which kind of future do we want to live in. And at the moment, it's really a future that has been decided for.
When you say it's decided for, who do you mean decides?
Exactly. So it's like a very small group of people that I feel like has decided this sort of trajectory at the moment. And it's mainly big tech corporations, but also governments that have also sort of caught up or are caught up in the AI hype.
Okay. We're going to come to Lila here. You are a research associate, and her work is basically to help African startups and innovation in the whole AI ecosystem. You actually work with Karine here. So do you agree with what Quincy is saying, or do you disagree?
AI is a big chance, so teams like Alina, who are from the continent building solutions for, at the moment, the European market with the EU AI Act, I think are the big chance that we are seeing today. And then later, maybe within a couple of years, when the African AI Act strategy becomes the act, then I see the solutions going back to the country, being refined, and having the solutions that are then needed. So for me, AI is more a chance and an opportunity for the continent.
Okay, somebody else agrees that AI is actually a chance. But I'm going to come to Marlene Straub. Now, Marlene, you have always been a big advocate for, AI and digital transformation. You're part of D64, right? What do you think? Where is Africa at the moment, currently?
Africa and Europe and a lot of other continents are much closer to each other in terms of the challenges we face than, for example, Germany and the US in a lot of terms. And then even when you look at the US, you could ask the question, okay, is it the US, or is it, as Quincy said, a few individuals in these countries that hold an incredible amount of power over the rest of the world?
Okay, interesting. Now we're going to move on to another topic, and that topic is about jobs, because Africa is always considered, the young population. Do you think that Africa could actually tap onto this technology?
Yeah, I do think so. But the issue is, what is the type of job? And also the big tech companies, they actually have like a huge labor force in Africa. The quality of their jobs are not the best that they deserve. People are doing work that actually puts them through mental health stress. They are given the jobs to their disadvantage in a certain way. They are jobs, but when we look at the conversations, what's the quality? So that's where, I mean, the government needs to really step up and make sure that people are getting like proper AI and tech jobs.
I mean, Karen couldn't have said it better. And so I just wanted to make sure to say that there's a lot of talent on the continent. And definitely a lot of people, I think we need to be bolder in what we are creating. But being bold is not enough. You need resources. You need investment to flow in. And I think this is like, if you're looking to how can we be part of this trend, as you said, we are like a very young population, means like we have a lot of agility, we move fast, we know how to adapt very quickly because we've not had a lot of resources to play around with, like a lot of Western country.
You say that potential is nothing if this technology is not really for the people.
Yeah, I mean, okay, yes, let's go there. Like building the technology for the people, and I think what I'm trying to get to here is that first we need to train people on this technology so that we can become co-creators of the technology. So why don't we develop, we can be like the developers as well, and the rest of the world can also adopt that. There's nothing wrong in that.
Wow, okay, that's powerful right there. So I'm going to come to, look at the way Quincy is looking at Tejumade. The way Quincy is looking at Tejumade here is like, it seems like you kind of disagree. What do you think?
Why do we need to jump on the AI wagon? And I understand everything you've said, and there's some potential there, I guess, in terms of creating jobs, in terms of programming and all these things. But at the same time, to really go up that AI ladder, there is, I mean, we can see that in the US right now. There's so much investment needed. There's so much resources that go into that could be distributed to so many other important things. And I don't understand why we go to AI and not to, okay, let's do some other things that maybe are even more important, like, I don't know, healthcare. It's the same here in Europe. I mean, we have these discussions here all the time, like redistributing resources, and governments at the moment decide to distribute resources towards that AI goal, but the goal is not really defined. Where is it supposed to take us? Is it AGI? Is it something else? And this whole thing is...
She wants to disagree. You want to disagree?
Disagree, actually. So I like... No, we do not.
Okay, but the eye contact here.
It's a very important question that Quincy is asking, which I also ask. So when we say that, like, we want to build AI and everything, I'm always about, like, what do you want to use the AI for? So it's like, it should be solution driven, like local context, like I want to use it to solve a problem. So you have to go from problem to like the technology, not that the technology then you're like, what problem can we solve with it, you know?
Okay, so it should solve problems. I saw a hand here. Yeah.
Well, I think you'll end up having a panel that really just agrees with each other on every point.
Apparently, which is a bit sad. I don't know.
Well, I would like to add on the points that you two have already made. So I think one of the elephants in the room is, of course, the resource challenges. So we can't pretend that Africa has the same sort of equipment in terms of resources and ability to pay for data centers that other countries have, and there's other hurdles to all of this, and you can question also what's the value of
Actually, I did end up reading a few things in my research, and I actually found out that Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria, these are the only places that have data centers. So where else can we get data centers, and where is that data actually going?
I think the data center conversation is a tangent, but I would argue that
It's coming. It's coming. Okay.
So I would argue that the resource scarcity in Africa actually builds a lot of opportunity just in terms of the creativity you need to approach challenges. So in Europe, our solution has been, let's slap an LLM onto every problem we have, which I would argue is not super efficient.
What is an LM for viewers to understand?
A large language model. So this is something like ChatGPT's models that you can use freely, or some of the paid versions. So I think the innovation that Africa can bring is something like what you've described: local context sensitive models that feed based on open source models and integrate things like local languages, local dialects, because if you look at big tech, they have no incentives to cater to the local populations and meet people where they are, with their needs, with their languages and cultural sensitivities. And so one of the greatest African assets really is being constrained financially with other resources that forces, I think, lots of people on the continent to just look in a very different direction.
Yeah, I just want to say, because I've also used like ChatGPT here, and I've realized that when I speak with a polished accent, then it does understand me. But Karine, do you think if you speak with your, pidgin English, or for example, if I speak in Kikuyu, which is my native tongue, by the way, because I'm Kenyan, do you think that this could be included? ChatGPT could also like listen to you or include you, or could you use this technology?
I don't think so. The reason why I say this is because ChatGPT and many AI systems are trained off the main languages, which are just like 20. But there are so many indigenous local languages which span across Africa, which is not trained to even to be able to hear the accents or even to be able to hear the dialects. Let's say the majority of the people in the world don't speak those main languages, but they need to have access to the tools, right? So I think the conversation is now more of like we as African people building our own tools, because you can't rely on the big tech to do it for you. So it also goes back to regulation. How do we ensure that we can set in regulatory laws, frameworks that ensure that people, governments can even retain their data in their country? From my legal perspective, I'm very heavy on privacy, data privacy, security, and stuff like that. So it's something that is really important, and that's actually a good thing about you, because we are very sensitive when it comes to our personal data.
We will come back to that. We will come back to that. But I just want to come to Quincy here, because we did talk about, colonialism and, cultural, priorities that ChatGPT chooses other languages. So I'm going to ask Quincy, do you think that there's such a thing as cultural imperialism? What do you think about this?
So the cultural imperialism aspect, I think, is very prevalent. This is a good point, actually, to call upon all the African governments to really put down their feet in the sense of saying, okay, we will not sell out our infrastructure, we will not sell out our contracts to all the big corporations that approach us from an international side. Otherwise, we can see it already with Google and Meta. They're building undersea cables. They have been building undersea cables all around the African continent, which also in some degrees can be looked at, so a neo-colonial aspect of technology usage. And they don't do that because they want to do charity. They do that because they want to entrench their power. They want to entrench the things that they sell into those societies. So I think the whole cultural imperialism / neo-colonial perspective is a very, very relevant one in this aspect.
Yeah, I want to come to you, Leila, because you can give us a German perspective. What do you think about all of this?
All these large language models, they are trained with wide data. And I think this is a big mistake, that the data is not there, and we need to have more data from the African continent, also in terms of languages. So when you see that Kiswahili is spoken by 230 million people.
Yes, that's a lot.
It's a lot, and yet the AI is not able to have a conversation with those. The sovereignty of AI is lacking. So we really need to work on a democratic AI standard. There is no unity, and the unity is that what will bear the chance of AI on the continent.
Okay, interesting. But we want to jump now to talk about infrastructure, because Quincy here mentioned something to do with undersea cables, and this data obviously goes to other places. So, yeah, what's your take on this?
I have raised my hand before because I wanted to ask a devil's advocate question when Quincy had his statement on digital colonialism. So I'm European, I'm speaking from the European perspective, and I always feel like there's a duality between, well, I don't want to be kind of paternalistic in what I explain to someone on the African continent. And we speak a lot of digital divides, and I would wonder, what is the priority? Is the priority giving access to as many people on the African continent as possible? Or is the priority making sure that that access is perfect, rights preserving, and so on? And I think, sure, it starts with things like mobile devices. It continues to things like undersea cables. We see that there's a lot of scramble around the African continent to be the first to lay a cable, to be the first to be able to extract data and eyeballs and populations on the continent. But I would really ask, okay, well, of people who are actually from the continent, how would you prioritize?
Who wants to answer this question first? Yes. Let's start.
So I think you need to start from somewhere. So we could start from imperfect infrastructure, like you say, because when you actually start using these tools, then you realize, what do we need to legislate? It would be immature, in my opinion, to actually set the laws, set the regulatory framework, set the guardrails without we knowing how it will play out when the people actually use these tools. And that's why many African governments actually don't even have an AI Act. Many of the countries have a strategy.
Do you think that these strategies are realistic and actually represent the realities of the continent, or are they just idealistic in a way?
So this is a tough question because the strategy is needed because AI is everywhere, it's global, and everybody uses it in one. Digital tools are everywhere, so you need to have some kind of regularized format. It may not be binding law in the sense of like the EU AI Act, but it's something that could kind of set a policy tone of how the government wants to implement these tools or how they want to build the tech space in their countries. We are a bit scattered. The African Union is not unified.
It's a big continent. There's absolutely no way you can generalize this place.
Yes. I mean, one way you could look at it is maybe unifying and actually giving more enforcement powers to the African Union so that once we have that unionized group, then it's easy to implement some of these strategies and some of these policies.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to come to you, Leila. How does this, how do these problems actually, or rather, how do these challenges affect your work as somebody who also like deals with partnerships in the African continent?
So for us, it actually is a chance. So as I said before, Alina AI had a solution, but the African market wasn't ready because there is no AI Act. Whereas in Europe, there's the EU AI Act, which basically they found a solution made in Africa for the European market. And for us, we see that innovation doesn't really have to do with on which continent it is, but where the markets are. So at the moment, there is a market, a big market in EU for these solutions, but later there will be a big market in Africa because in 2050, every fourth person is going to be living in Africa. So there are huge customers and markets waiting for these solutions to be ready. So I can only encourage everybody who has now an idea to maybe come to Europe, get a company going, and then take the refined solution back to the continent.
Okay, that's interesting. But I'm going to also ask Marlene a question because Leila here says that the market is ready. For example, also could be in Africa, but we also know there's this thing called the Brussels effect, you know? And, you know, this, who makes the rules? Because obviously when you come to Europe, it's a different story as opposed to in Africa, you know? So who makes the rules and who has to follow these rules? I'm going to come to you and then to you.
Well, it's kind of funny because the Brussels effect has very quickly gone from something that Europe was very proud of to something that we now absolutely hate. What Europe is coming to realize now is that without infrastructure and without levers like that, without sovereign tools within a territory that you're able to control, making the rules really doesn't mean very much if you can't have ownership over, well, cables and so on. And I think these are lessons that Africa can learn from.
Can Europe learn from Africa as well in some things, you think?
I want to say yes. I'm thinking of examples. So there's things like M-Pesa in Kenya, which is a very prominent...
This is a mobile money app. As a Kenyan, I'm super proud, by the way.
And it's incredible to see within what sort of time frame adoption was reached at a very large scale. But the European Brussels bureaucrat would argue, but it's not entirely perfectly rights preserving. And so I think the confines we've set ourselves in terms of European values, we just have to learn how to accept moving further towards the boundaries of what our value framework is.
Interesting. Quincy, what do you have to say about this?
So lots has been said, and I think there's several points I'd like to make. First, I'm very glad that Marlene raised this whole issue of speaking from Europe about the African continent. I think it is very important to understand this neo-colonial argument in a way, not as something that is, you know, you shouldn't try to close your digital divide, but it's more like an argument of okay, I think we really need to watch out here because history is repeating itself and infrastructure is being dominated on the African continent in African countries by international corporations. Let's try and look for alternatives. Let's try not to make history repeat itself and then, wake up in 2040 or 50 and realize, okay, wow, there is no divide anymore, but we ended up with all our data still flowing out and not being retained in the countries within the jurisdictions they belong to. I would really ask that question, where do we want to go with this?
I'm so glad Quinte is here because
We seem to agree on everything, guys. Did you meet outside? It seems like they met outside.
he couldn't have said it better because, the approach we're going now and then just trying to adopt the next LLM and everything, it's just not going to work for a lot of our context. And why are we doing that? We're wasting resources and everything. So this is why I'm still a big advocate that we need to go from the problem in our own context and develop solution for that. And a great example that was mentioned was M-Pesa. We had a huge problem. There was a
Silicon Valley called it cute.
there was a problem ongoing. We needed a solution.
Silicon Valley called M-Pesa cute. And I just want to talk to our international audience. M-Pesa was this big thing that started in the 2008 and I was growing up and it was a big thing. It actually bridged the digital divide.
Exactly. So we found something that worked for us. And you know what that means? It also means it belongs to us. And the data belongs to us. We come up with frameworks that helps us to be able to govern this.
I see you raising your hand.
I just want to stress this M-Pesa example because it's a brilliant example of how an African country has realized something that works, something on a large scale. I mean, it's being used by I don't know how many millions of people in Kenya and probably beyond even.
I mean, M-Pesa helped my grandmother. She couldn't go to the bank and she was told, she could go to and do a digital mobile money transaction without ever having been introduced to the internet. So this is actually pretty amazing.
Exactly, and I mean it's been done by a Kenyan company which now is being owned by several other companies as well, and it's not purely Kenyan anymore, but I'm not sure if that's the thing we want to talk about anyway, but it's something that's been developed and resourced and then also deployed in Kenya and not coming from outside by someone else and being implemented and then done. So it is possible on a scale, and it's possible what's there with what's there on the ground. Now I stumble.
Emphasis on what's there.
It's right here, not here, but over there. That's what I want to say.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we have just a few more minutes. I want to ask a final question to the panelists. If you could redesign artificial intelligence or big tech, what would you do differently? I'm going to start with you, Karine.
If I could redesign it. So when we are looking at the big techs like the Claude, Anthropic, ChatGPT, they're all coming from different angles. Yes, they try to make it as inclusive as possible. They try to train the data from people from different ways, but inherently it's biased. That's the issue. So I think the solution now is for every country to develop their own, like we said, like the M-Pesa example. So it's more like create an enabling environment, maybe the regulation from my perspective, a regulatory framework that would encourage these startups to also build their AI in a big way that could put their country on the map.
Okay, so she says a regulatory environment, and it also depends on the skill. Mylene, what do you think?
Ownership, reduce the concentration of these massive critical infrastructures within the hands of a few, and make sure that once people are using them, it's easier to swap, switch, use different models, and take your data with you.
Okay, flexibility. What do you think?
I think my two words would be need and democracy. So the need must be there. So like M-Pesa or Momo in Rwanda, it's because people are needing these solutions. So in Rwanda, for example, you can use Momo even if you don't have a bank account, which is the reality for millions of people. But with Momo, you have a phone number and then you can send money to your grandparents. So there's a big need, and they found an innovation which is used by everybody. So it's democratic.
Quincy.
So lots has been said already, and I agree with everything.
Quincy keeps agreeing with everything.
These were really good points. I would probably redivert resources from AI to parts of society. I would really focus more on healthcare. I would focus more on standards of living. I would focus on green transition, electricity. The AI thing is good, but I would, if I had the power, I would redirect resources to something else.
Okay, and finally, Tejumade.
Your question, if I had the power as a big tech, what would I do? I wouldn't try to build one tool that works for everyone. That's just nonsensical. It's not possible. It's a big, big continent. If I was a Google, like if I was serious about the African continent, I would have offices stationed in multiple different locations. I would do like a long-term investment in research. Not something I think I'm going to get any money from right now, but you cannot leapfrog that. You need to spend time in the community to be able to like design a solution that truly works and solve problems.
Well, there you've had it. There you've had it. It's been an interesting panel. And we have established that Africa can actually leapfrog its stages of development. It can do so much more. It can catch up, but potential is nothing unless you make it more ready. I have been your host, Rachel Ndwati. Until next time, bye-bye.